Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you, Becky. Today, we are talking about creativity that is joyful and fruitful and infused with magic. And this is the third conversation in the series of conversations about creativity, where I talk with different people who inspire me, whose creativity inspires me, because I want to find out all about their creative process and the magic of creating. And I am Karolina, a coach mostly for women. I help them to find deep sense of fulfillment and create in a way that is expression of their unique magic. And when I talk about creativity, I don't mean just arts like painting and drawing, although some of my clients are artists and I absolutely love working with them. I think of creativity in much wider sense as just bringing to life what is authentically ours and sharing our unique gifts. So thank you, Becky, for talking with me today. Becky is a coach, and I'm inspired by Becky's creations. Please tell us, Becky, a few words about who you are and what you do.
Thank you, Karolina. Yeah, I'm Becky Currell. I've been a hypnotherapist and coach for 15 years now. And I started off working with all different kinds of people. But for the past 2 years, I've specialised in working with midlife women. And I do one-to-one coaching with them. And I run a free Facebook group called the Midlife Sisterhood Social Club. And I run 6-week small group programs called the Midlife ALCHEMY Project, where we really explore whatever challenges midlife women are facing. And we use those groups as an opportunity to be in circle together and make connection. And I'm just really passionate about helping women make that transition to this next stage of their life, because it just seemed to me that lots of women were finding it difficult or challenging, let's say, and also finding it amazing, but not talking to each other about it. So I really wanted to find a way of bringing women together so they could share their experiences and we could all share our wisdom and help each other.
Sounds so beautiful. And it looks like what you are creating in your group, the Midlife Sisterhood and the Midlife Alchemy Project, which is such a cool name, Midlife Alchemy. That it comes from your heart and that you've observed a real need and something that you truly have seen, and you are kind of assisting and offering support in an area that is so needed and also so magical. I can imagine that there's a lot of potential for alchemy exactly there.
That is it. It is alchemy because it is those women coming together, the magic that happens when those women come together and they dare to be vulnerable, to be in that space. Because remember, a lot of women at that time of life are really feeling like they should have made it and they're meant to be all successful and managing everything and not finding anything difficult. So there is an element of vulnerability required for that alchemy, for the magic, for the women to come together and say, do you know what, like finding it really hard at the minute. And then that's where the magic happens, where we can lift each other up and support each other. And I mean, incredible magic happens, not only just within the group, but in each individual woman's journey.
Beautiful. And I hang out a little bit in your group, the Midlife Sisterhood.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, your creativity there is really prolific. You've created so much there, like a challenge. I remember there was one challenge that lasted for an entire month. It was about
Yeah.
gratitude, and you created such a beautiful content and had so inspiring conversations. And there was this energy of, I don't know, excitement and gratitude that was created in this process. And you showed up every day and you were present there. And also you create a lot of experiences like meditations. Recently, I attended your a full moon circle, which was also so beautiful and nourishing. So I want to ask you, Becky, about how you create. If you could kind of walk us through your process from the moment when idea appears in your head, or maybe it appears somewhere else, I don't know. And what do you do with it? How do you engage with it to the moment that you know that it is born into the world?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, first of all, I think I should say that I always had a blind spot around creativity myself. It was only a few years ago that I could acknowledge my own creativity, because as you said in your introduction, I just thought that creativity meant drawing and painting or sewing. You know, I had a really narrow view of what creativity was, and I couldn't see my own creativity at all. In fact, I would have stood up in court and sworn and testified that I was not a creative person.
Wow.
So it's only really these past few years, and that's through my own experience of having a coach and a coach bringing it to my attention. So it feels quite new to me to think of myself as creative, and for you to highlight places where you see that. But I've expanded my view of creativity exponentially to see all the places that it does show up. So just to say that it's new to me, sort of imagining myself as creative or recognizing it. So I think my creative process is really instinctive. It doesn't have much thinking. Maybe it could do with a bit more. I tend to, I don't know whether I feel like the idea comes from within my body somewhere. It's like it springs from deep in my gut or wherever it is, pings into my head, and then as soon as I've had that idea, then I want to act on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the process from initial idea to getting it out there is usually pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe some of my ideas could benefit from a little bit more planning and thought processing. I don't know, but it tends to be pretty impulsive. It comes through. I get excited, and it's the excitement and the momentum that makes me take action. And sometimes I don't, and I never really know how it's going to go. But I like that not knowing. I like feeling that it's an adventure, and some of my ideas fall completely flat and some of them seem to take off and work really well. So I don't really have a formula or a plan. It's just a feeling, an idea, and it is that energy and excitement that carries me
Mm-hmm.
through doing it.
Wow, I really love what you said, that it springs or originates from somewhere deep in your body, in your gut, and it comes to your head. It's
Yeah.
so wonderful, because usually when we think of creative ideas, we think that they come to our head. But you described it that it comes from deeper within and then enters the head. I kind of laughed when you described it. I could feel it almost myself. So gorgeous. And you mentioned that the excitement, that the kind of the fuel is the excitement, and you act quickly.
Yeah.
You don't overthink. You
Mhm.
don't, wow, that's amazing, because a lot of people, maybe people who even think of themselves as creative, they have all those ideas, but they think perhaps even too much, plan, want to make them perfect, analyze, is it good enough or not? But your kind of response is taking action, being on the flow of excitement and doing stuff. Is it accurate?
That is accurate. That isn't to say I don't sometimes overthink ideas I've had and analyze them. I'm certainly more likely to tear an idea apart or not act swiftly on it at certain stages in my cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So in the autumn or winter of my cycle, as I'm approaching my bleed, I'm less likely to take action on an idea then. So sometimes I have to sit on it and hold it until after my bleed and I'm coming into my spring, summer. And then it's a bit more 50 whether. So I can do that, but I'm mostly charging quite impulsively.
So it looks like that.
Do you feel okay? It's just in my group, the Midlife Sisterhood, that's such a safe space for me to try out my creative ideas. So that also helps, that I guess the place I am germinating my ideas, I know likely to be received warmly from this fantastic group of women. So I think that also has an impact on me feeling safe to put those creative ideas out there, because it feels a safe space to do it.
Oh, this is so important.
So
So
that makes a difference, I think.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like it's a safe container, a safe space for me to put some of these ideas in, and even if some of them don't work, that feels okay in that environment.
Yes, so important. Yes, because sometimes I think there can be the fear, like I'm sharing something with the world, like with the big world, and maybe it will not be received well, maybe it will be judged or ridiculed. But you are offering this beautiful solution to try it out first in a container, in a space that feels safe and loving, perhaps. I can
Yeah.
see how helpful it can be.
Yeah.
All creators. Yeah.
It's really helpful, because I do have some ideas that I want to share, maybe in, say, in my wider community, even just generally on Facebook, let's say, an example, and I am more likely to talk myself out of that. Whereas within the safety of the group, I usually think, oh, just give it a try, it feels fine. So, but I figure, the more I do it in the comfort of that safe space, then the easier it is to take those other ideas out to a wider community.
Yeah, makes perfect sense, really. Okay, very helpful. And I want to ask you also, what do you love most about creating? You mentioned excitement. So what does give you the most excitement? Or maybe there is another feeling there that you also love.
I do love that excited feel of creating. And now I'm reflecting on it, it's actually a similar feeling, and I haven't thought about this, realised this until you asked this question. I used to be an actor previously, and the feeling I would get when we were improvising and creating something from nothing as actors, I've just realised that that's the same feeling I get if I create something for my group. And it is really lively and bubbly, and there's so much energy in it. Like, I feel like I'll have enough energy to last me for years, although it does it doesn't. But I do love that feeling. I feel like I use bits of my brain that don't get used so often. It kind of gets into the corners somehow. There's like little muscles that get flexed that somehow makes it feel more lit up, and I feel really alive.
Wow.
I feel alive, I feel aligned, I feel like I've tuned all of my being into one frequency that just sort of vibrates in a way that makes me feel lovely.
Wow, I love it. I could feel it. I have goosebumps. And when you are describing and improvising as an actress and creating in this way, I could feel this kind of excitement of not knowing, and it can be maybe a little bit scary, I don't know, at least for me.
Yeah.
But there is this that you don't know what will come through, and that you can be surprised by your own creations, by what is born. It is, I don't know, the words that come to me are like magic, communion with the divine, sex with God, things like that, that it is something bigger than us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm.
It is. It does feel like that's my entry point. That's where I feel most connected. And I do love that flying by the seat of my pants, not knowing. Like I used to love improvising. You never knew what was going to happen, if it was going to work or not work. But it didn't matter,
Mm.
because what mattered was just that experience in the moment of pure creation, pure something out of nothing.
Yeah.
That is a great feeling. It's great to talk about that, because I used to feel really almost addicted to one experience all the time.
Mhm.
And then I think there was probably a big period in my life where I felt I didn't have that. That maybe, in early motherhood, felt like there wasn't so much of that. That there was creativity, but in a different way.
Mhm.
So it's great that I get an opportunity to feel that again.
Mm. Wonderful. It's like almost natural drugs for our
Yeah,
system, isn't it?
it is. You're making, this is making me, now I want to create something.
That's great. That's wonderful. Yes, I just want to touch on something, that you were an actress in your life, and for most people, acting would be associated with a very creative profession, and yet you were able to think of yourself as not a creative person. I just want to emphasize on it, because maybe there are some people who are watching or listening and they are thinking of themselves as not very creative. And I think Becky is a very good example that our mind can be very blind to something that can be really obvious to other people. So this is my personal belief, that everyone is creative. Every single person has their own magic and creative gifts to bring to the world. And we need to just look at creativity in just a wider sense. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge blind spot for me, just because of this narrow view I had, because all the other actors I knew just seemed to be good at everything. You heard of the phrase polymath, where people just seem to be able to do everything. They would play instruments, they'd make their own clothes, they would create paintings and act and sing and dance. It just seemed like there were some people that were able to do everything. And I
Mhm.
felt, because I just felt like I had one thing, which was acting, that somehow I wasn't qualified to join the creativity club,
Mhm.
which I now know is ridiculous. And I now believe so passionately that we're all creative.
Mhm.
And even someone like, I always had lots of different crazy hairstyles and colors. Somebody once said to me, well, isn't that creative, what you're doing with your appearance? And I hadn't even seen that. I was a bit like, is it? I was a complete blind spot. I just
Mhm.
couldn't see it. So again, when my coach pointed that out to me, it just didn't register. I just couldn't see it. I was completely blind. The story I had told myself for 45 years, that I was not creative. And that was a limitation, because it meant I wouldn't try things or do things, because I
Mhm.
thought, oh, well, I can't do that because I'm not a creative person.
Mhm. Oh, thank you so much for sharing this part with us. I hope it will help some people to start looking at themselves in a new light, knowing that we all have these blind spots. Yeah. Okay. So, the next thing I want to know about is,
I do. I mean, I know
sorry, there is a little bit of delay.
the delay.
Please
Yeah,
go
sorry.
ahead.
No, I was just saying that, there is something I hear from other women, like they say they're not creative.
Mm-hmm.
And there's someone I'm thinking of, she says she's not creative, but creates the most incredible food and meals. And it's like, well, that's really creative.
Yes.
There's a million different ways you can be creative. And I just think we can be blind to our own unique version of creativity because we spend all our time looking at how other people are doing creativity. And we're like, oh, but recognizing our own gifts.
Yes, so true. I totally agree. Yes. And the next thing I want to ask you about is kind of balance between the creative flow and excitement and some structure. Because you mentioned that yes, this is often impulsive, but maybe you will be surprised, but I think of you as a quite disciplined person. Yeah, I thought that you'd be surprised. I remember when we met in the women's circle
Yeah.
1.5 years ago in Waking the Wild Feminine. uh, I was impressed because you had this idea that you would like a letter to your body, and and you really did it, and I think you shared it after. And I thought, wow, uh, this is wonderful that she committed, she did it. I had a lot of ideas, but quite often they stayed in my head, but you said something and you did it. And also when I observed you in the challenge, in the gratitude challenge, I thought, wow, it takes a lot of discipline to record all those videos, to write all the content, to be present. So I I have this kind of image of you that you are like super fun and exciting. And yes, the pictures with the colors that you share on Facebook, this is so ecstatic sometimes. And I'm sure that you must have a lot of discipline actually to bring all those creations to life. So I'd like to ask you how you see it, the balance.
That's really interesting feedback. So I always feel that I'm woefully lacking the structure and discipline.
Mm.
But again, we do tend to look at, we look at what we think we're missing rather than what we are actually doing, don't we?
Mm.
I mean, that 30-day gratitude challenge is a good example actually, because that enforced structure, because I made that commitment to, maybe that's where the structure comes from. I am good at, if I've made a commitment to someone or a group of people, then I am very likely to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can find the commitment, like I want to commit to doing this for my group, then from the commitment, kind of the structure emerges.
Mm.
And that was a really good example of where I didn't really think it through beforehand. It's like, I'm going to do it for 30 days. That'll be brilliant. And then even a few days in thinking, oh my God, what have I done? This is so much work. This is a big commitment. I should have planned this out better. I should have, it took up way more time than I realized. But I kind of had to create the structure as I went along as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it was my commitment that kept me going. So, and I think maybe that example of the letter that I wrote in that circle, again, if I've made that commitment, if I've said publicly, not if it's a commitment to myself, that wouldn't work, but a public commitment, I'm going to do this thing, then that creates the discipline for me to do it. I think I have got better at structure and discipline as I've got older. I have got better for sure. I still feel like there's a long way to go on that for me.
Wow, but this is very helpful about the commitment done to a group of people or to someone, that it can help us actually channel our creativity and stay with the creative idea until it flourishes.
Yeah, because otherwise it's all just scattered and loose and kind of this like too much to get hold of. But there's something about that focus of, I'm going to do this thing for you. I don't really know what it is yet, and I don't know if it'll be any good, but I've said I will, so I will.
Yeah.
And I had a real dip in the middle of that where I was really regretting. And well, I wasn't regretting the challenge because it was a beautiful experience. It was, as you said, loads of gorgeous conversations came out of that. But I did have a dip in the middle of like going, oh my God, I've said I'll keep going, so I've got to keep going. So
Yeah.
but that was a good lesson for me, actually. I proved that I could do it, and I did learn from it. I will put a bit more structure and planning in place next time, and I would like to do another one, because that intensity that came from committing to that creative process every day for 3 days, there was a lot of gifts in that. So I'd definitely do that again.
Wow, amazing. I think it will be very helpful to people who have a lot of creative ideas, but maybe they jump from one to another and they are just like half-baked and nothing really happens. To do that commitment, either to a group where you feel safe, or to your coach, or even to a friend, but make a commitment to someone. And then the structure can support the creative flow, isn't it? That the structure doesn't feel very limiting or serious or rigid, but it's a support for this gorgeous juice and magic of creativity to flow and give life to whatever needs to be created.
Again, I didn't really see until very recently how you need both. You do need the structure in order to facilitate the creativity and the magic. I didn't know that. I always thought structure and discipline was boring and limiting. And I just, again, I only recently discovered that really having the structure and the discipline allows more magic to come through. And I'm very at the beginning of that learning curve of discovering that. Thank God I have discovered it. I was very resistant to that. I didn't want to think that there had to be structure and discipline, because that felt like the opposite of creativity to me. But you need both.
Yeah, same for me. I was, and perhaps in some areas still am, quite resistant to discipline or structure, because it feels like limiting to my free creative spirit. But it can be a dance, beautiful dance of both, that allows the alchemy and the magic, I believe.
Yeah, I love that, thinking of it as a dance. You see, when you think of it as a dance, then I'm interested.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, I can dance with it, as long as I'm not sort of trapped in a prison with it. That's fine.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's now talk about the creativity in the midlife. A lot of your clients and the women in your group and your programs and circles are in midlife. So what do you mean by midlife, and how do you see kind of the emergence of creativity in this particular group of women?
Well, midlife very loosely means women aged roughly between 35 and 55. And it's women who may be perimenopausal or menopausal or even postmenopausal, but they're women that may be noticing hormonal changes or shifts, or maybe they've just, midlife does seem to signify something for us when we recognize that perhaps we're halfway through our life, and do we want the second half to be the same as the first half or not? And it seems to me, with all the women I've worked with, they creativity is a really big part of the transition. I could probably get the numbers actually, because I have some data for some questionnaires that I've had, but anecdotally I would say that probably 90 to 95% of the women I work with all have this yearning for more outlet or more expression of their creativity at this time of life. And it can be a time of a woman might completely change her career, for instance, because she wants a more creative outlet through her work. But if that's not possible, I just find women are searching, longing, yearning for these places where they can go and be more expressive and explore their creativity. And it seems to me that this is a really important exploration that we need to do at this time of life. Because I think often we realize, we might have felt we were really creative when we were young, or maybe even in our 20s, and then maybe our 30s and 40s we feel a bit more starved of creative opportunities. So there's this hunger for it, of wanting it back in our lives, and I hear that a lot. Women are hungry to explore their creativity and express themselves. And hopefully the groups, we kind of encourage each other and facilitate that for each other. It's almost like, I find this a lot as well, women tend to need permission, and it's to do those things because they're maybe busy caring or putting the needs of others first, or they're busy. And it's like, if we can give each other permission to say, yes, go and explore that creativity. Yes, this will help you feel fulfilled and whole and more alive, then they're more likely to go and do it.
Yes, exactly. Because a lot of women, not all, but a lot are mothers, and in the midlife, the children are a little bit older, or maybe even teenagers or adults, young adults. So it's more time. But this, what I wanted to ask you about, that it can be quite hard sometimes for women, I guess, to allow themselves to do something that is maybe for themselves only. If the creativity is for others, for the family, or for business that it brings money, perhaps it could be a bit easier because they have a reason to create. But like kind of creativity that is just for nourishment of the soul, this could be more challenging. Have you come across this case?
Yeah, 100%. That's pretty much universal, that experience of feeling that it is selfish or too self-indulgent to take any time to do whatever it is. So I don't know, say a woman wanted to go and dance or do some crochet or whatever it is, writing in her journal even, that it just feels that goes to the bottom of the list. And it's like this hierarchy of, okay, when everyone else's needs are met, when all the jobs are done, when everything else is finished, I can tick everything on my to-do list, then I will allow myself maybe half an hour of doing this thing for me. And what I really encourage women to do is that if they can move it further up the list and put it higher up their list of priorities, by being more creative, that actually creates more capacity for them to then serve their family or their community or their work colleagues or wherever they are. That actually we need to bring it higher up the list, not have it stuffed at the bottom. And that's really difficult. I experience a lot of resistance from women to that. Not many women find that easy to get on board with. They feel guilty, they feel it's wrong. So it's a big thing to ask women to do these soul nourishing activities just for the sake of nourishing their soul.
Yeah, I felt kind of sadness when you were talking about this being on the bottom of the priority list. Yeah, like really sadness, because the way I see it, Allowing ourselves to be creative in the ways that we want to be creative, for me it really is a portal to express something the most precious in us. And very often it leads to new ideas that are also not only for us, but to the world. Whether it is having more patience for our family, or creating better meals, or starting a new business or new creative project that will benefit with others. Like, we need to access the depths of ourselves in order to shine the light of what we have to offer to the world. So this is thank you for doing this work of encouraging women to bring it higher on their priority list. It's so needed in the world.
And I think the women that report to me that they're feeling, they often describe this feeling of feeling flat or grey, like everything's a bit grey. Those are often the women where creativity is the bottom of their list. And when they access that, it's like the colour comes back on in their life. And you're right, it colours everything. So it isn't selfish at all, because it's like then they get to vibrate or shine out the colours of themselves everywhere they go. I love what you say, it's a portal. I love that.
And it opens more opportunities for sure in other areas of life. And and this, the alchemy, the midlife alchemy, I think that these two ingredients, like having the soulful activities, nourishment for self, creative expression at the bottom of the list, this ingredient combined with making the decision to put it higher and to allow the time for it, even if it is hard, it creates this transformation and alchemy and unleashes something in us. Because it was hard, in a way, this has potential for the alchemy to happen. Would you agree with that?
100%. I agree with you. Even just that shift of intention of allowing the creativity to come higher up the list, that alone can make a huge difference. Like you say, even if it's difficult, even if there isn't as much time as you would like, that shift towards it with intention of creating or allowing the creativity can shift everything really quite radically. Even just a little bit can make a big difference. I really agree.
Yeah, wonderful. Oh, wow. Is there anything you would like to add in the topic of creativity and midlife?
I was just thinking that I was then thinking about when do I get most of my ideas, and they're usually when I'm outside in nature. And I think, again, that's a yearning that women at midlife often report, is wanting to connect to nature again and getting more outside. And I wonder if there's a connection there, because, again, when you're out in a different environment, again, you're more connected, aren't you? Connected to that portal, if that allows more creativity to flow through you. So that's a bit random.
Oh, no, but yes, I totally agree and see it in my life also. I get a lot of creative ideas during my walks with my dog, and maybe it's the body movement, being in different environment, but also seeing the cycle of the nature, and the nature being such an inspiration, because the nature is creating all the time, all the colors of the sky and the shapes of the clouds and the plants and trees and flowers and colors and the air and the changes. It's kind of creating constantly, and I feel like being in the nature, it unlocks something and kind of reminds us that we are part of it also, and the creative juice starts flowing just by being there in a way. One of my favorite authors, Sandra Ingerman.
It does, yeah. And midlife is a process of reclamation. You're reclaiming, and part of that reclamation is that time, even if it's just 10 minutes. 10 minutes of time for you.
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
allow that creativity to flow. Because you
Mm.
only have to start with a little bit, and then you can just keep adding more and more.
Yeah, that's super helpful. That even a little bit, even 10 minutes, because
Yeah,
almost everyone can do 10 minutes. Yes, it
yeah,
start unlocking things. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah, you just only have to start with the tiniest bit, and it may only be a tiny bit for ages. And then you might start to increase it, and then something happens in life and it, shrinks back again to nothing, and you just start again. But it gets easier each time, I think, each time you go back, to allow yourself more and more. It's about
Mm-hmm.
allowing it.
Wonderful. Before we wrap up, do you have any story, either from a client, friend, or yourself, about a creative project that came to life, maybe in surprising ways or in a way that inspired you?
Oh, that's tricky because there's so many. I know I've got a really, I don't know if you saw in my group that there's a really beautiful lady called Katerina who was inspired to create some art all about her experience of midlife and
Mm.
going through the menopause, and she's created this work of art.
Mm.
Again, she's increasingly allowed herself more and more time, although she's a graphic designer and illustrator by trade. She didn't spend much time on her own artwork that was just for her, and she's increasingly given herself permission, created this beautiful work of art that represents being a midlife woman. It's just incredible. So I mean, that's a sort of really obvious one. Oh, there's so many stories. So sometimes it's even just a little thing, like a woman saying to me, I just went on a different route on my walk today. Even that, like I just didn't do the same thing that I always do. I turned left instead of right.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be even the tiniest thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, seems really small on the surface, but then the knock-on effect can be huge.
Yes, totally. Yeah. And are you currently working on any new creations? I would like to start any new creations.
I want to now. After this conversation, I suppose I'd had a few things rumbling, but I hadn't felt that strong impulse and energy to
Mm-hmm.
run with any of them as yet. I'll definitely have a new circle happening in May. I think my next creation probably will be another either 14-day or 30-day challenge. But I'm not quite sure what yet. Maybe around creativity.
Oh.
I'm feeling inspired now.
Mm-hmm.
So possibly.
Mm-hmm.
What
And
about you? What are you creating?
well, I'm creating this conversations. For example, I really felt inspired to talk with people who create in a way that inspires me, but also the variety of people. This is my third conversation, and I have a few more scheduled. And yes, there's this kind of attraction. I want to find out about how people see creating creativity and the magic of it. And I'm quite curious about it because some people are quite structured, and they have processes, and I admire it in a way. And some people are my kind of more flowing and have more even mystical approach to creativity, and I'm totally inspired by it. So this is one of my creations. And yes, I'm working with a few clients now, and creativity is a big theme now with all of my clients, or most of them actually, either working on a new project or just creating for themselves, but mainly even shifting their lives in order to include more creativity and turn it into their work and business. So this is the kind of work that I love the most, actually, when a woman kind of gives herself permission to make her work about expression of her gifts, and also to discover a lot of her gifts, because very often when I start working with clients, they know their strengths and their gifts in some way, but as we dig deeper, a lot more gifts are revealed, and I love this process very much. So it feels like just my conversations with clients are creations that I feel inspired by. And now that the situation with the coronavirus is kind of prompting me to look at more opportunities to create online. And I like this idea. I like creating content actually. So I'm kind of hanging with this idea. Now with the kids at home all the time, there's not so much space for creating, but I feel something bubbling, and it will be around creativity for sure.
Oh, wow. Great. Well, I look forward to seeing that. Yeah, it must be really inspiring and fascinating hearing about everybody's different ways of being creative.
Mm-hmm.
But even just this conversation now, I can feel like little bubbles popping.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And they are popping from down up in a way, isn't it? Interesting.
Yeah. No.
I wonder if it is for women mainly, or men experience it the same way, that because we have womb also, which is the, like, I think the biggest archetype and symbol of creativity, and like vessel for bringing something to life. And maybe it is that for us women, connecting with the womb as our creative center can add another dimension to our creativity, that it's not just ideas in our head, but as you described at the beginning of our conversation, it is coming from the depths of the body. I
We're
wonder
birthing things all the time. Right.
So Becky, if some people, maybe some women are in the midlife of their life and would like to get in touch with you, is it possible to contact you or join your group? And if yes, what's the best way?
Yes, there's the Midlife Sisterhood Social Club is on Facebook. I also have a business page on Facebook, Becky Currell Coaching and Therapy, and I have a website, beckycurrellcoaching.co.uk. So reach out to me in any of those ways, and we can make contact.
Perfect. And I will include the links in the description of this video. Wow, Becky, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to have this conversation. And thank you for sharing so many interesting and helpful stories and ways of creating. I found it really inspiring. And I also feel the bubbly energy coming. So maybe I'll go and create something now.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you've inspired me again. I'm really thinking, I feel fired up to create something. So thank you.
Great. Okay. Bye, everyone. And feel free to get in touch with Becky or with me and share about your creations. We would love to hear about what you're creating, or if you have any questions or stories about creativity, it would be lovely also to hear them. Bye.